Feeding schedule for the breastfed baby. What is ideal? In my clinical practice, I have seen many mothers face this dilemma, especially the first time mothers. There are so many advisories and opinions regarding many facets of baby feeding. One such dilemma is about establishing feeding schedule for the newborn and young infant. When to feed, how much to feed, how do I know if the baby is getting adequate amount of breastfeed, etc. Since in comparison to bottle or katori feeds, there is no objective quantification of the amount of breast milk that the baby has consumed. So let's address these questions one by one. So when to feed? There can be two methods of identifying a baby's need to be fed: demand feeding and timed feeding. So what are these methods and which one should be followed? Now, before we decide what method is the better one, a word about what these terms mean. So, what is demand feeding? Well, demand feeding is exactly what the word suggests. Give baby feeds when they demand it, and how do they do that? Well, they cry and let you know. And what are the advantages of demand feeds? The crying periods are reduced as the baby is fed as soon as they are hungry. And how does that help? Well, for one, with excessive bouts of crying, the baby tends to swallow in a lot of air, which leads to collection of wind in their tummy, which can lead to colic in them. Secondly, it is postulated that babies whose crying time is minimized by fulfilling their needs as quickly as possible tend to be more emotionally secure grown-ups. Another advantage is that there is better control over the feeds, as some babies may have fed less in the previous one, and a self-demand schedule helps in the baby overcoming their hunger in the next one and catching up on that loss. There are some disadvantages to this method too. Firstly, the baby may be crying due to another cause, and for the first time mother, it may be difficult to understand the cause of the cry. Secondly, as we are dependent on the baby's cues for feeding, the mother cannot predict when the baby will demand the next feed. Maybe they had taken a very heavy feed earlier and may not wake up in 2 to 3 hours. This especially happens with a larger size baby. Or they may have taken a very small feed and now they are hungry in a short while, not giving much time to the mother to perform her own activities like bathing, toileting, eating, etc. So she has to be at the beck and call of the baby. The other schedule of feeding is the timed one, where we follow the clock to feed the baby. So, at a set 2 or 3 hour interval, the baby is fed. Now, what are the advantages of this method? It is a great method to follow in the first few days of the newborn period. This is so because of two reasons. Firstly, especially when the mother is a first time mother, she may not be very tuned to her baby's cry for hunger. Secondly, in the first few days of life, some babies may demand feed very infrequently, and as the major stimulus for maternal milk supply is frequent suckling by the baby and regular emptying of the breast, following the timed method makes more sense. When the baby is premature, very small in size or sick, they may not give reliable hunger cues, so the timed method is the preferred one. Mother gets more freedom for performing her daily chores as she knows that after she has fed the baby, she now has a defined amount of time for performing some of her important personal activity. The method has its disadvantages too. Although most newborn babies, especially in the first 3 or 4 weeks of life, do feel hungry at the end of the specified period, occasionally the baby may not be so, whereas the clock says it's time to wake up. And during the process of waking up the baby, we may only end up leaving the baby frustrated and cranky. Similarly, the baby may feel hungry earlier than the stipulated time, maybe because they had not taken the previous feed so well or have been overactive since the last feed and hence become hungry earlier. But as the clock still doesn't permit, we will let the baby cry. So what should be the best solution? Well, the best schedule is always the one which is most practical and logical, and that should be something in between the two types of feed schedules. Something we may call a semi-demand schedule where both the clock and the baby's desires work, which means we do let the baby demand feeds, but we may feed the baby earlier in case the mother needs to do so for her own convenience, maybe because she needs to go out or take a short nap or do something else. Similarly, although we needn't wake a baby up if they are sleeping soundly, especially after a good feed taken earlier, however, in case too long a gap has happened from the previous feed and the baby has still not demanded feeds, we would like to wake up this baby for a feed. Similarly, if we are following the time schedule, it doesn't mean that the baby will not be fed if the demand feeds earlier than what the clock says. Neither will we forcibly wake up the baby as per the clock, especially when we know the baby had taken the previous feed very well. And what should be the duration of the feeds? How much time at each breast? This is another topic of some confusion and doubt amongst moms. We mostly recommend feeding 10 to 20 minutes at each breast and prefer complete emptying of one breast before proceeding to the next one. This is so as the nutrients in the earlier part of the breast milk, also known as foremilk, and the nutrients in the latter part of the breast milk, also called the hind milk, are different. For the baby to get adequate nutrition, it is imperative that they get both foremilk and hind milk. The time duration of 10 to 20 minutes is especially necessary in the first few days of the newborn period, as this timing will ensure adequate milk intake by the baby. Moreover, it ensures complete emptying of the breasts, which is the major stimulus for good milk production. As the baby grows and the mother gets more confident, this strict time duration needn't be followed, as the baby would give enough cues to the mother about them being fully satisfied even though the clock may not say so. As the baby grows, there would be some variation in the feed requirement. In the first 2 to 3 months, though, most babies will demand feeds at 2 to 4 hourly intervals, the smaller interval being for the smaller size baby, whose stomach capacity would be lower, and the longer interval being for the larger size baby, who would be satisfied for a longer duration. All will demand feeds at night too. By 3 to 4 months, babies have grown in size considerably, have larger stomach sizes, and feel satiated for a longer duration, with most babies dropping their nighttime feed and sleep fitfully for a longer duration, also enabling the mother to get proper sleep at night. Even during the daytime, on account of reduction in the frequency of feeds, the mother can plan the feeds of the baby as per her own convenience and go back to starting a relatively stable routine. A word about the term exclusive breastfeeding, which you must have heard very often. This means feeding only breast milk, not even water, even in the summer months in warm areas. The reasoning being that breast milk has enough nutrients to sustain the baby's growth and enough water content to look after the thirst of the baby. Giving anything else to the baby will only interfere with this process. The recommended period for exclusive breastfeeds is 6 months, after which gradually other foods like semi-solids and animal milk is recommended to be started. We have discussed that a baby cries when they are hungry, but we must also know that every time a baby cries, it is not only due to hunger, as they can convey all their problems only through crying. With passage of some time, a very special mother-baby bonding develops, and it is possible for the mother to differentiate between a hunger cry and cry due to another cause. But I thought it appropriate to mention the very common causes of crying in the newborns. Now, they may be uncomfortable due to a wet and soiled diaper and the bad smell that they get. They cry when they are too cold or they are too warm. They may have pain somewhere, like an ear pain or a colic. Stuffy nose and malaise due to fever may also cause them to cry. Even newborns can get bored lying on the bed for long periods and can cry due to sheer boredom and will quieten on being picked up. Thank you and happy parenting. See you in my next video.